feature presentation.
Oh, welcome to the 8th best movie podcast in Canada. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, I think you have something in your throat. You might want to get that cleared up.
Ooh, is it a full moon? Is it a full moon? Today we are reviewing a Marvel Studios special presentation. We'll get into that. Directed by Michael Giacchino, which is also very interesting. We'll get into that. Werewolf by Night. So if you guys aren't familiar with what Marvel Studios is doing lately, they are doing these special presentations right now based on like holidays. So Werewolf by Night is their kind of Halloween special. And then later we are getting a Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. And then there are rumors that they might kind of continue this trend on Disney Plus in the future, which I kind of think is interesting. Eric, how are you doing? It's not actually a full moon, but
It is October
it's
and
11
spooky
a.m.
season. So this
Yeah.
fits perfectly. But yes, to your point.
I'm wearing a Midnight Madness shirt. I tried to I feel like this works for this whatever you want to call this. It's not a movie. It's not a TV show. It's a TV movie. Is it like a special? What do we call this?
I mean, what is the Star Wars Christmas special to the rest of the
Yeah.
Star Wars universe? It's much better than that, though. It's one of those things where like Marvel's gotten to that point now where it almost feels like the movie and TV thing. Like if you look at this from the point of view of like it all being televisual or television in general, like even the
Yeah.
movies, you've gotten to that point now where the holiday special, which is kind of cyclical to certain TV shows. Like you look at something like Community, right? Where like every season they
Now getting
had
the movie.
a Halloween episode and you would always kind of be looking forward to that. Or, for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you would have the Halloween episode, which was the heist episode as well. So it kind of feels like Marvel, with its body of work as a whole, is starting to do that now, where you're having these one-offs within the canon of this larger universe. So I think that that's kind of interesting in how it's conceptually playing with not only a genre but a time of year and a theme, and it is kind of specifically going to the classic tropes of Universal monster movies for this version. And
no spoilers, just so everyone knows. We
Yeah.
won't spoil anything. It's just what you've seen in the trailers and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the Universal monster movies thing is purely aesthetic, so like that's
totally
not ruining anything. It being
No,
in
I just
black
meant
and
to get it
white
out before we start talking too much. I just want to
Yeah.
get it out there. No spoilers on this review.
Yeah, we're not gonna wolf this one up. So yeah, it's one of those things where like again, like you've seen it even in some of the MCU movies where like Thor. The one I was reminded the most of was Thor Ragnarok, where Thor Ragnarok and this feel like one-offs, and I think both are successful at what they do. But
Really
now
sticking to their tone and being so different than everything else.
But now I'm also worried that they'll try to repeat that again with Werewolf by Night in some other form, that maybe it won't work as well because, whether it be a feature or another show or something where these characters possibly spin off or go somewhere else, or just Marvel trying to take that exact same formula and trying to apply it within, the supernatural realm of the MCU, I think may or may not work to its advantage where it does here. It makes sense.
Yeah. I had a blast with this, man. Like, people who listen to us know that I'm the big MCU stan of the two of us, but and I'm kind of a sucker for 90% of what they put out, even good or bad. But yeah, I just really love the commitment to the aesthetic to this. Like, I love Michael Giacchino. We've talked about him a lot as a composer, maybe kind of, he's everywhere really. So him getting a chance to direct something, and you can see that he has a reverence for those Universal monster movies and those classic kind of horror movies, but just right from the get-go of like committing to the black and white, committing to the film and the film scratches and film grain, committing to the practical effects, committing to that kind of campy tone of those movies that, of the time they weren't necessarily campy, but as you go back and watch them now, they kind of are. And I think it has all that, and it reminded me of like, in Tarantino's and Eli Roth's Grindhouse. Is that who did the other one? Yeah.
Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez.
Rodriguez.
Eli Roth directed the Thanksgiving segment.
Yes, sorry, that's what I'm thinking of too. All those guys that went and did all the fake trailers for In Between Grindhouse, like, and really committed to those aesthetics and that kind of stuff. I'm just like a sucker for that, and I feel like this movie, from the sound and this, Giacchino score, even reminded me a lot like of Lost and different things too. I loved Gael García Bernal. I thought he was great. The practical effect of the actual werewolf, I think, will be divisive to some people. I personally, again, I think it's committing to what it's trying to do, and I think if you buy in, I think you'll have a really good time with this. I think it's surprisingly violent. I liked the kind of, maybe not necessarily like mystery element, but I liked that game that they were setting up on this kind of side pocket of the MCU, a supernatural side pocket that we're going to start to see more of. And I really like that it's a one and done. It's a lot of style over substance, like, but it's really fun style. So I feel like, because it doesn't stretch itself out over 6 episodes or things like that, like, it is just a kind of one and done. I found myself just like really engaged throughout the 45 minutes or before credits, and really kind of just appreciating, Giacchino going, this is what I want to do. Let's do something weird, that, it fits in this kind of overall universe where a lot of the movies feel samey, but not in a bad way. They're all entertaining, but they all kind of follow the same structure to the most part. And it's something me and you talk about a lot, Eric, with the MCU, and me being a huge fan, you, depending on the project, liking it or not. Where the things we're more interested in is when they kind of explore genre and explore style, and really take whoever's directing it and let them kind of put their stamp on it. And we don't know Giacchino's stamp because he's never directed anything, but I'd be totally cool if this is something that he's super interested in, like trying it with a different character, and maybe Werewolf by Night shows up. Like, there is a character in this that I love, Man Thing. That's not a spoiler because he pops up briefly in the trailer. That was my favorite part of this, right? And I just, I would love to see him explore this side of the universe more, and going back to what I was saying with playing with genre and tone and stuff like that, like the stuff where they go all out and go, sure, every superhero thing doesn't need to be a superhero movie. It can be a subgenre, and kind of really commit to that. And I like when the MCU does that. And I think they did a really good job here.
Yeah, I agree. I think like horror movie fans will be delighted by the references to, filmmakers like Jack Arnold and Val Lewton Productions, or, even just the classic and most obvious comparison to, the Lon Chaney Jr. version of The Wolfman, or, Werewolf of London. And those movies, in terms of its lighting and shadows on the face specifically,
Yeah.
like, I love the way that, in those classic movies, you'll see sort of light piercing the eyes, but everything else is in shadows.
It's kind of, yeah.
Or the cigarette burns, obviously, being the other thing that kind of pops up a little bit throughout the
which commits to when the real change is supposed to happen and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very much in the vein of like something that, like, what Mank did recently, but I think this does it actually better and is more weirdly sincere than Mank. Shots fired, but it's kind of more playful in its tone, and that works for it. It's still very derivative of that style, but for a first, crack at, directing something, I think Michael Giacchino does a pretty good job at emulating that style and that atmosphere and tone than just simply, regurgitating plot. And I'm glad that we can talk about Man Thing, because Man Thing was my favorite part of this
I loved him,
special.
man. I loved him.
I didn't watch the trailer, so I didn't know that he was even in the trailer.
I heard that he was, but like, and I double checked before I talked about it, but
and that's the weirdness of the MCU that I want more of, where you have these characters that don't really make any sense within
to be in this
the
universe,
MCU, but are still amazing.
Like, where's he been this whole time?
I know.
Like,
I want to know more about Ted. Just give me more. I love Man Thing so much. I mean, I loved Swamp Thing as a kid as well, like the cartoon
which
series,
is the DC version
of it. But yeah, there was just something very like I want more of Jack and Man-Thing hanging out and just being buds.
I think
Like,
we might get that. I don't know how, like what you said, like I don't want to overstay the
overdo it, yeah.
welcome or anything like that, whether it's another special, maybe every Halloween we pop in and see what, Jack Russell's up to and Man Thing, and like great name, Jack Russell, hilarious.
Well, it reminds me of Jack Burton from
Yeah.
Big Trouble in Little China, right?
Yeah.
Kurt Russell. So
Yeah. So yeah, I'd be down, or maybe we see him pop up in that supernatural side, whether it's Blade or, Moon Knight or something like that. Like if they are going to go the kind of route of pairing all those characters up, whether it's Midnight Suns or something like that, like, this character will be coming back. I'll be fascinated to see if they commit to that costume and stuff in other movies, because like I feel like it would be so jarring if he showed up in like an Avengers movie or another movie that isn't this aesthetic, right? And like him wearing that kind of, dude in a werewolf costume kind of thing. And that's the stuff that I'm like, I wonder if they would go with a CG version if it was in another movie. And I think even that stuff could work, right? Like if it fits the tone and the special effects that they're using in this, special presentation that they're doing. But if he shows up in other places, it fits the aesthetic and the special effects and different things that they're doing in that movie, which I think could be a really cool way to play with things. Like not everything needs to match one to one, and you're still playing with the medium, even though it's in this universe. It's just perceived in different ways through the lens that we're watching it. That I think could be interesting in the future to see, because I just couldn't imagine this motherfucker showing up in a Secret Wars in this wolf costume with everyone. Like I
which I
couldn't
would
see it,
love.
but
I
like
think
I
that
would
would
love
be
it too.
amazing.
But like I would love it too. But I can't fathom that. But like I would love it. But I don't know if everyone would love that.
I know, but
um,
it's with keeping in the tone and consistency of the character's
yeah.
pocket of the MCU or the corner of his world. And another thing that it did remind me a lot of, there's an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer called Slayer Fest, and it's basically these group of hunters that are gathered together to
Mhm.
hunt down Buffy.
I love
Um,
that element in this. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and it all takes place during prom, so she's juggling both prom and
that's dope.
these
Yeah.
killers and hunters that are all after her. But with
I love a
this,
good deadly competition,
yeah,
or
yeah,
like yeah. And
yeah,
I
man's the
thought
most deadliest game kind of thing.
It's, obviously we didn't even get into what it's about, but maybe you guys should just kind of watch it for yourself. But like, um, the Bloodstone plays a big part into this. We have Elsa Bloodstone played by Laura Donnelly, playing Elsa Bloodstone. I thought she was great too. I thought the fight choreography was dope, both from her and from Werewolf by Night. Shout out to Harriet Sansom Harris, who is stole the show in Licorice Pizza, and just absolutely crushing it here again. I thought the cast was fun, like all the different kind of characters that they had, and them going through this manor. It kind of had a video game vibe to me too, right? Like there's a lot of what's the right term, but like the Predator video game was this, and the Friday the 13th video game was this, where one person controls the monster and the other players are all hunting that monster, right? And
Or
like
running from
it
it.
had, yeah, or running from it, yeah. So it kind of had that vibe in it. Is it asymmetric? I forget what the term of that type of video game is, but it's like a multiplayer game where one person is this and the rest of them are all trying to hunt down the thing. So yeah, I think it was fun, man. There's not much else to say. Like I just think it was like a really good time. It introduces you to this new pocket, introduces you to a few new characters that I think you will see pop up in other things. I do hope we see, like, Man Thing reminded me of when, Korg, I know with you, Eric, in the second Thor movie, it wore you down a little bit with Taika's kind of, whatever. But Man Thing, like, it reminded me of that first time I saw some like a side character like Korg or something like that, where I'm like, I love this guy. I will kill for him. I want to see him everywhere. And I hope we see more Man Thing, and I hope we see more, Jack Russell moving forward. I'm curious to see what they do with these special presentations or these characters moving forward.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit as well as like, the Han and Chewie relationship in some
Yep.
ways where, the communication is there, but you don't understand what Man Thing or Ted is saying, but Jack does. So like there's that kind of like it's a one-sided conversation, but it's still very funny in terms of when Ted is, responding back to Jack. So yeah, all of that I think is a lot of fun. I think the style works, especially if you're in the mood for some genre around this time of year.
Yeah.
um
Perfect time to release it. Yeah.
the acting and the performances are very heightened overall, but it works. I love some of the dad humor, specifically by Ulysses Bloodstone. um
Oh yeah. It's
there's a good
great.
bit there that's funny. I was also just curious about, like, because again, like, this character, this storyline, obviously, having briefly kind of skimmed through Wikipedia, Moon Knight was introduced in the Werewolf by Night comics, and so I'm sure there will be some sort of connection. Maybe there
Maybe in
is an
season
Easter
2.
egg even in this that I didn't pick up on, but yeah, I could see that character kind of you know, secting at some point with Oscar Isaac's character from that series. I just hope maybe the tones kind of can balance each other out, because this is much more playful than Moon Knight is more self-serious. Even though that they're both kind of more, again, sort of looking at the supernatural realm. The Bloodstone as well, I thought was kind of interesting, because there's a movie franchise from the early 90s called Subspecies, which is about vampires, and the thing that they're all kind of after is the Bloodstone. And I know Charles Band, who's a big comic book guy, to the point where he tried to get the rights to Doctor Strange and did, but then the rights lapsed back, and then he created Dr.
Interesting.
Mordred. I wouldn't be surprised if he ripped off the Bloodstone from Werewolf by Night if it's in the original comic book series.
It's
So I thought that
possible.
that was kind of interesting as well. But yeah, it's all very much dependent on your interest in the genre and the aesthetic and the style. It's still contemporary in some of its action choreography and the
Yeah.
cinematography and some of the editing. Like, I think that's kind of where it loses its credibility a little bit when it comes to committing to
It's still very
the
much an
style.
MCU thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you're watching it, it's like, oh, okay, like, the performances are very much like stylized, but not to the point where it's of another time. Where when you watch the original Wolfman and you see, Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney Jr. interact before, Bela Lugosi turns into the first wolf, and afterwards when Lon Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains are interacting together as father and son, and they're trying to kind of come to an understanding of what's going on and how to deal with this situation. It's a very, like, you go and watch those movies and it's like, okay, one, they're also very short, but they are
Sure.
still somewhat stylized to the point, like, if you were to watch the Wolfman after watching Werewolf by Night, I could see you still being a little bit, maybe, not turned off by it, but kind of hesitant to kind of give in to that tone, because of it being such an artifact now, where this has
Takes
that,
that.
but it still feels contemporary
That's exactly. Yeah.
in its execution, that it's like, okay, well, it's not completely, I guess, alienating to
It's
a
the word I was
viewer.
going to use. Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I'm curious to see what people's reaction to this is, because I do agree with you that I think you have to buy into it. You have to kind of have, like, I don't really have a huge reverence for Universal monster movies or some of the movies that you're mentioning, but I do like when people play with style, and then something like this can interest people into going back and seeing some of that stuff. And maybe it won't work for you, maybe it will. But I could see this also going the other way, where it's too far down the kind of rabbit hole of like committing to this, where something like the costume for Werewolf by Night might be off-putting to people because it's so cheap looking or whatever. Like, that was the one thing when I saw it, and I know I keep going back to it, but I think some modern audiences just, I don't know if they'll completely buy into it. And I could see people kind of being like, this looks stupid. But I hope that you understand what they're going for with the tone, and maybe like I said, maybe when you see him show up in something else, it'll be a little bit more modern looking. But I'm kind of with you, Eric, where I hope they commit to the tone of where they were introduced and just continue that, even if it makes no sense in other projects and things like that. But I think it's still, yeah, like you said, modern enough to be like completely engaging throughout the whole thing. Like I think that fight choreography, I agree with you, is very modern. Giacchino's score, I would say, sounds more modern than it sound like. He's always had an interesting sound, and this sounds more like the shit that I remember why I loved him when he started in Lost. Not started in Lost, but when I first, started to go, who is this guy? And I really love him. And it has that kind of, it just reminded me of those kind of dramatic scenes in Lost with the bum 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 bum, and like just him absolutely crushing it, and just good for him, yeah, for trying, his hand at directing. And you don't see many. Do you see many composers that then transition into directing? You see some
It's not a very
cinematographers who do it.
common thing. I
Yeah.
know, like, you'll sometimes see them as producers. I know Nick Britell, was a producer with Damien Chazelle on, certain things, and even with, working with, Barry Jenkins. Like, it's not uncommon for an executive producer credit or a producer credit. But yeah, in terms of directing, it's a very rare thing. You hear about, cinematographers sometimes making that transition into the director's chair, and whether or not that's wholly successful, that's another conversation entirely. But um yeah, it's interesting that you have a guy who, has worked for so long within this one specific pocket of the industry. Pocket seems to be the word of this episode. um do something completely out of left field, but at the same time, I'm sure he's had enough experience on set, or just kind of, working with
With
filmmakers.
J.J. Abrams and,
Yeah. I
and
mean, look at somebody, we'll talk about it more on the regular show, but, Danny Elfman having composed White Noise, and, he has well over 100 credits to his name.
I think Giacchino's up there already, man. Like I'm
Yeah,
looking at his discography, and he started obviously like in the 90s on things like My Brother the Pig and Legal Deceit. But then
classics.
and then also, he did some short film stuff, TV series, obviously with Alias, and then Lost with J.J. Abrams. And then, but he really got started with video games, ironically, like doing the Gargoyles video game score and the Lost World, and Small Soldiers, and a lot of Jurassic Park stuff. So I mean, he came back and did the Jurassic Park scores and the Jurassic World scores later, and a lot of Medal of Honor and stuff like that in the early 2000s. So he got his start in video games. So he's just been, and I know we talked about that he maybe was spread a little too thin lately. Like,
Yeah.
and that's something we talk about with Danny Elfman as well, right? Like, it's just like when you do so much, is like, do you lose your sound, or are you just doing things that are different? Some seem like just jobs, some seem like passion projects that you're like, obviously this is a passion project for him, where he put everything into the score, and obviously directing being his first, his debut. But I've always really liked the guy. I just hope that, like, maybe if he wants to direct a little bit more, like, slow down, pick your projects, be a little bit more selective. I don't know if you like, I know you want to set your family up for the future, but like I really do like the guy, and he's probably the biggest, in terms of like blockbuster composers, like right now. And good for him for trying directing, and he's good at it, it seems like it. So
Yeah, he's very omnipresent in the studio system in terms of composers. But for every, great score, there's two or three of them within the same year
never
that kind of,
bad, but just kind of,
no, they just kind of feel almost like just like placeholders, or like, temp score in a lot of ways, where it's like, oh, we have a Michael Giacchino score, that's great, but like, does it really mean anything? And I think his best score this year is the Batman score,
oh god,
where that
100%,
main
yeah.
theme, very much echoes Danny Elfman, but also does its own thing. And then you look at like the other scores that he has, contributed to, or put together this year, and it's like, there's nothing that kind of sticks out the same way. I think some of his best stuff, obviously, his Pixar stuff is great, but like his Planet of the Apes scores are
Oh my god,
incredible.
they are so good.
And they don't get
Like,
enough they are
those
weirdly
movies in
underrated.
general.
Yeah.
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I can't wait. And I hope Giacchino comes back for that, because I really do feel like his scores are a huge part of those movies. And yeah, I agree with you. You know, like this year alone, he's done Thor: Love and Thunder, which I
Mm.
felt like, you know, I liked Mark Mothersbaugh, and I'm kind of like, why didn't they bring him back? I know Taika's been working with him and stuff on, like, Lightyear, good movie. Don't remember any of the music. Jurassic World Dominion, he was doing the same Jurassic World music he's done the last couple movies. You know, Spider-Man No Way Home, great. Um, but then things like Extinct, Let Him Go, An American Pickle, you know, Jojo Rabbit. You know, I know he did Bad Times at the El Royale, which I liked actually his music from that. A movie that I know not many people liked, but
It's a solid film. Actually, I'd like to
I'm,
revisit that movie. It's a good
yeah,
time of year to do it.
I was gonna say that as well. But his War for the Planet of the Apes score and but all of his Planet of the Apes scores are just incredible. His Mission Impossible scores are great, or I guess Ghost Protocol is the one that he did. But
Yeah.
um, you know, Super 8 is great because it actually had a vibe to it, even though, again, derivative of certain, you know, of John Williams and things like that too. But obviously that movie just emulating Spielberg from every aspect of it. But like, I love the guy. But yeah, I agree with you that I think I can't go through this and go, any of these are bad. It's just some are more forgettable than others, and some.
Well,
But
some of
if
them
I
are
get,
jobs, right? Like
yeah,
that's the key thing where it's like, okay, Danny Elfman's 50 Shades of Grey score is not memorable whatsoever, and it's
yeah,
interesting in terms of like, oh, Danny Elfman did the score for that movie, but then when you listen to it, it's like, oh, well, it could have been done by anyone. Where, you know, at the beginning of Danny Elfman's composing career after Oingo Boingo and working with Tim Burton, it's like you know the sound, you know the way that he uses choral voiceovers in
yeah.
terms of like, you know, making something very opulent and cinematic and strange, and then
Eh,
over time it kind of dilutes, partly because you're always, you know, in you know, business and working and things like that, and you're always in
And your
demand.
sound might not work for that movie that you got
Yeah.
hired for, so you do something else, and then it doesn't sound like you per se. But I mean, like, come on, the dude made Up. We're going back to like that. Up score is incredible. His Star Trek scores are great. Um, yeah, the dude's awesome. And like, I there are those movies where I immediately know it's him, and then there are the movies where his name pops up later, and I go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So, and I think the ones where I go, ooh, that's him. Are the ones that I like more. But I'm excited to see what he does next. I wonder if they'll keep him around to kind of explore this pocket of the MCU, or if he'll get a shot at a feature, or maybe an entire series or something like that. But I definitely,
Or outside
um,
of comic book movies as well. Like, I wonder what his interests are, you know,
yeah.
past, you know, working within, you know, this specific part of the studio system. Like, does he want to direct a movie about musicians? Does he want to direct a movie about
What does he think of Tar?
yeah, exactly.
Um,
I would like to know that. I'm very curious
to
to
get some
hear
composers.
composer reactions to that film. You know, and yeah, like it's just interesting. It's like, okay, like, because we the ubiquitous nature of Michael Giacchino, that omnipresent sort of composer that is almost like a default pick when it comes to the studio
Especially
movies.
Disney movies, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like, does he want to just make Disney movies? Does he want to try to do something else? Like, where do his ambitions lie or fall, or what have you? And this is a good starting point because it is something that is really, it allows him to be creative, but it also gives him a template to work within. So, you know, he can have a lot of fun with the style of, you know, playing in that 1930s Universal monster movie kind of milieu. But at the same time, he also has those reference points to fall back on if he needs them. And it's not necessarily like there's anything in this that I would say, like, oh, this is Michael Giacchino as a filmmaker. Like, I don't really know what
Oh,
distinctly
right. Unless he
has.
keeps doing stuff like this, and then you go, "Oh, that's his thing," right?
Yeah,
Like,
because
and
J.J. Abrams, as much as I like J.J. Abrams is,
lens flares, baby. That's the.
but lens flares are such a
I know,
common thing in general.
but
But
overuse of them is
yes,
definitely a
yes,
director stamp.
yeah.
That became like almost a meme, but
But yeah, but JJ, his identity is somewhat thin compared to filmmakers that he very much admires, where like when you watch a Spielberg movie, you
Yeah.
know what a Spielberg film is,
Right.
where with a JJ Abrams movie, you know that it's like, okay, well, it's going to be a popcorn movie, it's going to be entertaining, or at least you hope it's going to
Mystery
be entertaining.
box kind of like,
Yeah, there's not a lot there in terms of its style. JJ's still kind of a company man as well, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
But I do
still kind
feel
of a guy who is emulating Spielberg and things like that, not necessarily having. I love JJ, but like when he went back from Star Trek, Star Wars, Star Trek, Star Wars kind of thing, like
well,
I'm
even
excited to
Super 8,
see.
right? Like Super
Yeah,
8 is such a
I like Super 8.
I do too, but it is still a very derivative version of both ET and Close Encounters with
Yeah.
a little
Oh,
bit of
absolutely.
Gremlins
Which
and
maybe
yeah.
that's his thing, right? And I could see JJ, asking Giacchino to direct something for Bad Robot or something like that after
Yeah.
seeing this. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be for Disney or, but obviously has a great relationship with Disney. So, and I keep going back to the, Searchlight and 20th Century Pictures, 20th Century Studios.
Yeah.
Relationship now, because it always fascinates me that like they have this kind of trio of studios that is the one for you, one for me kind of thing. I am starting to see even more of that, or just like them, with releasing Barbarian and stuff like that. Like it shows me that
Michael
they
Giacchino's Barbarian. What would
well,
that
no,
be?
just like I don't know, just like letting people kind of make interesting stuff either for Searchlight or for 20th Century Studios. Like I'm surprised that Disney released a movie like Barbarian, right?
Yeah.
So not saying that that's what Giacchino would go do, but at least like giving people the freedom to come over to their other studios, use their marketing dollars, using their budgets, even though they're much smaller than the budgets you get on a Disney movie or a Marvel Studios movie or something like that, but like letting them play around. So even if he does stay within the Disney family, like to maybe do something that's not in the comic book or popcorn or it's still good. Barbarian is very much a popcorn movie, but like you might throw up your popcorn. But anyways,
I think it's more
I'm
of a
excited.
bottle film than a popcorn
Sure,
movie.
yeah, a milk movie. All right, I'm gonna give Werewolf by Night a 4 out of 5. Really, really dug it quite a bit. I'm excited for the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. I have no idea what that will be, but I'm assuming it's just going to be the Guardians going on an adventure at Christmas time. So, so I'll definitely be in for 45 minutes. Eric, what are you giving?
I'm going to give Werewolf by Night a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it doesn't overstay its welcome. More Man Thing, please.
Oh yeah,
But it's also a special presentation. I keep on wanting to say feature, but a special
yeah.
presentation that is also kind of, very much playing it safe in what it is sort
Oh,
of
totally.
emulating. And so with that, you have to kind of like, it is very much a kind of disposable entertainment, but a good one in that way.
I
So
don't disagree. So
yeah.
that's what I said. Like it is mostly style over substance or all style over substance, but for the MCU, I'm like I again, like I like some character dynamics in other movies a lot more, but like for what this was trying to do, I think it really really succeeds. And I'd be curious now, like before we wrap, like what other there was that rumor, an article came out, I think last week or this week, saying that they might pivot some of the Disney Plus shows into these special presentations. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think like I don't know how I feel like because the Disney Plus shows have been either hit or miss or have kind of haven't been able to figure out how to use their runtime, like usually just making long movies instead of making TV shows. And She-Hulk is very much a TV show, right? And they figured WandaVision was very much felt like a TV show. And
I would disagree with
um
WandaVision, though. I think WandaVision is in that kind of middle
sure.
ground of both
Yeah,
feeling
in between. Yeah.
cinematic, and I think
I
because
don't
it
think
is
yeah.
it's referencing television shows specifically, and like it is playing within that format
It
that
still
it
was
is
a long movie,
television.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's more ambitious in terms of its filmmaking. But yeah, it's an interesting question to sort of discuss because you have even something like Armor Wars that was going to be a series, and now it's going back to the drawing board and being rewritten as a feature. And so it's like, okay, well, what works as a 45-minute, or an hour special or what have you versus, a series versus a feature film or a series of movies. So, um, it comes down to kind of like picking and choosing, obviously, but you have to think like what characters will work best. And then even that, there's a political kind of nature to it. It's like, okay, well, why are you only giving this character,
A special where
short
like
shrift versus, somebody that has had, 5 movies now and had like a third Ant-Man movie. I get it that it's connecting to a bigger picture, but it doesn't necessarily feel like Ant-Man has earned a 3-movie arc the
I
way that
agree.
some other characters
I
have.
think me and you are two of the people that I like the Ant-Man movies,
I
but
love
yeah,
Paul
they're
Rudd, and and,
yeah.
and and I want him to always have somewhere to go. But like, yeah, Ant-Man I think would be fine as like a 45-minute special, than
But
3
like the
features.
rule of threes in the MCU, that third movie sometimes is always, I think, I think it'll be completely different than those first two, even though it's still Peyton Reed and things like that. But yeah, I don't know if they'll continue just the holidays thing. Like, are we gonna get a Easter special? Are we gonna get, a whatever Flag Day for the Flag Smashers or what? Like, I don't know.
Oh
Like
God.
I'm joking, obviously. I have no idea. I'm kind of down for it. Like, I don't think everything needs a 6-episode or 9-episode series or 12-episode series or 24-episode series, but like, I like that they're experimenting and trying to figure it out, right? And I still think we're in the infancy stage with the Disney Plus stuff, right? Like, I think they're already learning from those first series that they put out during the beginning of the pandemic, and we're starting to see them learn from that, both on the Star Wars side and on the Marvel side when it comes to shows. And then with this, now they're experimenting with the special presentation of going, okay, well, maybe like a 45-minute, it's basically just one episode of TV, right? And then can that work for certain things? And then that's how you maybe introduce a new character, and maybe you don't need to introduce them over 6 episodes, right? It just depends. So I don't know if they'll pivot all to specials or all to Disney Plus shows. I still think it'll be a mix, but it is going to be interesting, to your point of like who they deem, like, will it be more ensemble shows that will be like Secret Invasion style things that will be like more of a but then Armor Wars sounded similar to Secret Invasion, right? Like of an ensemble kind of piece and things like that. But then Secret Invasion's a show where, yeah, it's interesting. But I like that they're kind of saying, fuck it, let's just experiment and try to figure out this as we go along. So who the hell knows? But the Guardians Christmas special, I can't believe we're getting a Guardians thing probably in like a month or two. So
Yeah, we'll probably get even a teaser trailer for the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 shortly as well.
yeah, both of those probably at the same time. You got to
Man, it's
think,
almost the end of 2022.
isn't no? How it's wild. Like, it's wild. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We really, really do appreciate it. Please go check out all of our other hashtag content that we have right now. You guys can
Daddy
go
made
check
you
out.
some content.
You guys can go check out our newest episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast. Eric and I are going to be talking about our quick jaunt over to New York, where we saw Don Cheadle and Danny Elfman, like we mentioned, as well as got Shake Shack and saw a movie at the New York Film Festival. So we'll talk about all of that, as well as the Super Mario Brothers trailer. Yeah, it's not out yet, but we're going to be recording while it's probably happening. So that's exciting. As well as other stuff. So that's episode 134. We also have a couple other episodes you guys can check out. Our TIFF wrap-up episode, which is episode 132, where we go over everything we saw at TIFF and kind of rank those, as well as our kind of Last of Us trailer special that we did last week, which was episode 133. If you guys want to listen to some more reviews, we have tons of stuff out right now, like Clerks 3, Don't Worry Darling, all of our TIFF stuff like How to Blow Up a Pipeline, The Greatest Beer Run Ever, which is now streaming on Apple TV Plus, Woman Talking, Pearl, which is now in theaters, Andor episodes 1 through 4. Episode 5 just dropped. Triangle of Sadness, The Banshees of Inisherin, Empire of Light, Bros, Brother, I forget what else.
The Fablemans,
The
Glass
Fablemans, yeah,
Onion.
go the two biggest ones. Probably go check those out. So those are all on the reviews channel or
And there will
on
be
YouTube.
more.
There will be more. We'll be spreading these out over the next eternity, probably till next TIFF.
The next Infinity Wars.
Yeah. One stop shop. Just head over to Letterboxd, which is Untitled_movies. And as always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com, and every Monday through Thursday on CBC and CBC Gem on Family Feud Canada. You won't actually see me, but you will see my words sometimes. And then follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric March, and you can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Man Thing. Bow, bow, down, down, down.
You make my swamp
heart thing.
Okay, bye.
Sing.